So before we move on from this model of community representation, let's have a little look at a case study. And you can see how the community representation model works. So the scenario is that a chemical company is interested in setting up its storage and central handling facilities in the local area. So you can see that the community will probably have this sort of not in my backyard type mentality about this, and probably for good reasons. The risks for potential spillage are there, and so it's quite a contentious issue. So the scenario involves this local council being concerned about the project, particularly in relation to community safety, and it's suggested by the company that a committee be formed to look at the proposal in more detail and to examine the implications. So, which stakeholders should be invited to take part in this meeting? So you can have a bit of a think about who would have a vested interest in this particular issue. You can see here that this is actually the type of composition of a particular intersectoral committee that might be involved in this sort of project. The local residents would probably have a major stakeholder interest in this issue. Now, you'd have to sort of ask yourself whether a single resident would be sufficient representation of that particular interest group. They might actually feed into a local neighbourhood type advocacy group, because it could be quite risky. This person may actually have a relative, for example, who works for the chemical company, so you have to actually watch for these sort of potential conflicts of interest that may occur in this situation. But the council, environmental health people, police, fire services, because if there's a leak, the fire service needs to be involved. Workplace health and safety officer that knows about the legislation and regulations in this regard. The local elected representative who theoretically should have the interests of the local residents at heart, but you can imagine that this representative may also have the local industry at heart, and they may be thinking, well, if we have this actual facility in the local area, that may lead to advantages, commercial advantages for other local businesses. Emergency services for the same reasons, the fire services. The local government department, which is a different level of government to the council representative, and Department of Environment for obvious reasons. So you can see here there's a local committee that is involved, and so you've got community representation. Now, this does not mean that any one of these particular groups will have a particular element of power, and especially the community, the local community representative. It is unlike the first model. This person doesn't actually have a lot of power in this regard. But if we look around the various types of initiatives that are involved, especially these government issues, you can see here that there are a range of different examples of centering around state government, local government, where this sort of community representation model is implemented. So the third model is community involvement. So essentially the community are involved, but they're involved more or less as observers on the sideline. So in this case, there's an external body. The professionals or the external bodies actually set the agenda and make the decisions. The community may be involved in working out specific problems. The community are invited to participate. Often you may get letters in the mail asking your opinion on a particular development. It doesn't mean at all that you'll have any level of representation. Your views, whether your views will be seriously considered or not. It's a matter of invitation to be involved. So you can see here it's a very low level of community involvement, and often companies use this just to be able to tick the box, yes, we consulted the community. Linked by commonality of interest. So the group that's formed actually have an interest in a particular issue. Doesn't mean they necessarily have the same perspective. So, like for example, the example of the chemical company wanting to establish a site in a particular neighbourhood. Obviously, there's a few different people interested in this issue, but for very different reasons. So this type of community involvement model is most appropriate when there are specific identified health risks, and really it's the experts that know exactly how to deal with the situation. So you might have, for example, an outbreak of a serious infectious disease, or looking at, say, drink driving initiatives, immunisation, seatbelt wearing, machine guarding, HIV/AIDS. So there's very important issues where there are well-established processes. So the characteristics of the three models that we looked at are as follows. The community development model, the first one, is essentially where the community has self-determination, self-reliance, and self-governance. So it's a very powerful type of model. The second one is the community collaboration model, where there's an agreement to participate. The community organization does participate. There's a process of consensus building and decision making to move forward, and also there's coalition building, which means the various partners in any particular endeavor actually build their relationship over time. The community-based intervention, which is this third model, where the community is consulted, but generally speaking, it's driven by outside bodies, so external expert professional bodies. Again, each model, each of these three models has a value in certain circumstances, and they're appropriate in certain circumstances, but not others. The application of each of these three strategies needs to be dependent on the community, the community situation, also the issue involved, and community control, for example, may not be appropriate in certain situations where there's a sun exposure campaign where you need to have community involvement, but really it needs to be sort of driven by external environments, whereas if there's an environmental problem that needs to be fixed by both the community and external providers, then the community control model is not so much relevant, but the collaborative approach with collaborative process with stakeholders represented, which is essentially governed by these two types of models, is the most appropriate. So it just depends on essentially how the community is made up, and also what the particular issue is as to which one you might choose. Overall, though, community engagement is essentially about working with rather than on communities. So it's direct community engagement involving participation by communities, and informed participation, voluntary participation. And this is important to the longevity and viability, and in other words, sustainability of health promotion programs. And it's critical to those broader issues of global sustainability, where you need significant buy-in from a very large population. And finally, this model, you might see this model around the place, where if we need to, for example, progress on ecologically sustainable development, there's a certain number of different priorities. We certainly need economic development. In the old model, economic development was the primary goal, but in fact there are at least four goals: health and well-being, environmental sustainability, health, and economic development. And essentially this is going to be achieved with effective community engagement and appropriate community participation.